The house that paid in silence. Before we begin, I need you to imagine something. It's 3:17 in the morning. You're sound asleep in your warm bed. Your neighborhood is quiet, safe, peaceful. Then, you hear it. Not a scream, not breaking glass, not a car alarm, just scraping metal against earth. Slow, methodical, rhythmic. You pull back the curtain, and across the street, bathed in moonlight, you see your elderly neighbor. A tiny woman, barely 5 feet tall. She's hunched over a shovel in her backyard. At 3 in the morning. Digging. You watch for a moment, confused. Maybe she's planting something. Maybe she couldn't sleep. You let the curtain fall. You go back to bed. But here's what you don't know. That garden, it's already full. And what's buried beneath that quiet Sacramento soil would soon shock the entire nation and become one of the most chilling cases of serial murder America has ever seen. This is the true story of Margaret Holloway. A grandmother, a landlady, a caretaker, and a woman who turned her home into a graveyard. This is the story of the house that paid in silence. But before we dive into this nightmare, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. We cover the darkest, most disturbing true crime cases that'll keep you up at night. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you're already part of the family, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let's enter the house on Willow Creek Lane. The perfect neighbor, Sacramento, California, early 1980s. Willow Creek Lane was the kind of street where everyone knew everyone. Kids rode bikes until sunset. Neighbors borrowed sugar. Block parties happened every 4th of July. And right in the middle of it all sat a modest 2-story boarding house. Pale yellow paint peeling in the summer heat. A wraparound porch with rocking chairs. Flower boxes in the windows. It looked like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting. And the woman who owned it. She seemed just as perfect. Margaret Holloway, 72 years old, barely 5 feet tall, white curly hair, thick glasses. She walked with a cane, though neighbors noticed she forgot to use it sometimes. She had that grandmother energy, you know, the kind of woman who'd bake you cookies and ask about your day and remember your birthday. Everyone loved Margaret. She ran a boarding house for people society had forgotten. Elderly men with no family. Disabled adults who couldn't live alone. People on fixed incomes with nowhere else to go. And Margaret, she took them all in. Low rent, hot meals, a clean room, no judgment. To the postal worker, Margaret was a saint. To the social workers, she was a blessing. To her tenants, she was family. But here's the thing about Margaret Holloway. Saints don't ask for your social security card the day you move in. Saints don't insist on being the only name on your bank account. And saints definitely don't keep a locked shed in the backyard that smells like chemicals. See, there was something about Margaret that people missed. Or maybe, they just didn't want to see it. Because when you're desperate, when you're alone, when you have nowhere else to go, you don't ask too many questions. You just feel grateful, and Margaret knew that. She understood something most people don't. Something dangerous. Vulnerable people will trust anyone who shows them kindness, even if that kindness comes with a price. Now, before we go further, let me paint you a picture of what living in Margaret's house was actually like. The boarding house had 8 rooms. Small, basic, but clean enough. Tenants shared 2 bathrooms. There was a communal living room with a TV that only got 3 channels. And every evening at 6 p.m. sharp, Margaret served dinner. Soup, usually, sometimes stew. She'd stand at the stove, humming old hymns, stirring the pot with that grandmotherly smile. And everyone ate. Because when you're poor, when you're elderly, when you're disabled and alone, a hot meal means everything. Margaret would sit at the head of the table like a matriarch. She'd ask about everyone's day. She'd laugh at jokes. She'd offer second helpings. She made people feel seen. And that's the most terrifying part of this story. Because Margaret Holloway wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. She was a monster hiding in plain sight. Wearing a cardigan, serving soup, smiling, the woman behind the smile. So who was Margaret Holloway? Really, that's the question detectives would ask later. And the answer, it's more complicated than you'd think. Because Margaret Holloway wasn't even her real name. She was born Margaret Louise Carter in 1911, in rural Nebraska. Dust Bowl era, Depression era, poverty that would break most people. Her childhood, we don't know much. Records are scarce. But what we do know is this. Margaret learned early that the world doesn't care about women like her. Poor women, uneducated women, women with no options. So she made her own options. At 19, she married a man named Robert Keane. He was a factory worker. Decent guy, by all accounts. They had a daughter, but 3 years later, Robert died. Suddenly, unexpectedly. Doctors called it heart failure. Margaret called it tragic, and she collected his life insurance. Then she married again, James Thornton, a shopkeeper. He died too. 5 years in, another sudden illness, another insurance payout. You seeing a pattern yet? By the time Margaret was 40, she'd been married 4 times. 4 husbands, 4 deaths, 4 inheritances, and somehow, nobody connected the dots. Margaret moved west in the 1960s, changed her name to Holloway, bought the boarding house on Willow Creek Lane with cash, and she started over. New city, new identity, new hunting ground. But here's what's really chilling. Margaret wasn't some out-of-control killer. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't sloppy. She was patient, methodical, strategic. She understood that if you want to get away with murder, you don't kill people anyone will miss. You kill the invisible, the forgotten, the people society has already buried, before they're even dead. Now let me tell you something about the American social safety net in the 1980s. It was broken. Social security checks went out automatically. Direct deposit wasn't common yet. Everything was paper checks mailed to your address. And if you were elderly, disabled, or mentally impaired, you needed help managing that money. Enter Margaret. Sweet, helpful, trustworthy Margaret. She'd offer to help her tenants. She'd take them to the bank. She'd cash their checks for them. She'd hold onto their money so they wouldn't lose it. And slowly, quietly, she'd get him to sign papers. Power of attorney, bank account access. Some tenants even changed their wills, naming Margaret as their sole beneficiary. Why would they do that? Because Margaret made him feel loved. She remembered birthdays. She bought Christmas presents. She sat with them when they were sick. And when you're 75 years old with no family, no friends, no one who calls, that kindness feels like everything, even if it's a lie. Alright, quick break. If you're enjoying this deep dive, do me a favor and smash that like button. It helps the algorithm push this video to more true crime fans. And drop a comment letting me know. Have you ever met someone who seemed too good to be true? Let's talk about it. Now, let's talk about the tenants who checked in, but never checked out. They disappeared. Arthur Bell was the first. At least, the first we know about. Arthur was 73, retired mechanic, widower, no kids, no siblings. He moved into Margaret's boarding house in the spring of 1983. He was quiet, kept to himself, liked to tinker with old radios in his room. By July, he was gone. When neighbors asked, Margaret smiled sadly. Oh, Arthur moved to Arizona. His daughter came and got him. Lovely girl. He's much happier there. Nobody questioned it. Nobody asked for the daughter's number. Nobody wondered why Arthur left all his belongings behind. Because Margaret said it with such warmth, such sincerity, and people believed her. Then there was Helen Moore. Helen was 56, but she had the mind of a child. Developmental disabilities. Sweet, trusting, terrified of being alone. She moved in that same summer. Margaret doted on her, braided her hair, read to her at night. Helen loved Margaret. By October, Helen was gone too. Transferred to a state facility, Margaret explained. Better care. I visit her every week. No paperwork, no forwarding address, no phone calls, just gone. Then Samuel Price, stroke victim, left side paralyzed. Then Edith Collins, Alzheimer's, no memory of her own children. Then Frank Delgado, veteran, PTSD, drank to forget. One by one, they moved in. One by one, they vanished. And one by one, Margaret had an explanation. Moved to live with family. Went to a nursing home. Passed away peacefully in the hospital. She'd dab her eyes with a tissue. She'd talk about how much she missed them. And people felt sorry for her. This poor woman, they thought. Caring for all these people, only to lose them. What they didn't know, was that Margaret hadn't lost anyone. She knew exactly where they were. 6 feet under her roses. Now here's the thing that'll make your skin crawl. The money kept coming. Every month, like clockwork, social security checks arrived. Addressed to tenants who were supposedly long gone. And every month, Margaret cashed them. All of them. Bank tellers started to notice. Same woman, same forged signatures, Same calm smile. One teller, Linda Rodriguez, later testified that she'd asked Margaret about it once. "Mom, this is the fourth check this month under different names. Is everything okay?" Margaret laughed. That sweet, grandmotherly laugh. "Oh honey, I help my tenants. They trust me with everything. I'm all they have in this world." And Linda, she felt guilty for even asking. This is what makes Margaret Holloway so terrifying. She wasn't a Hollywood villain. She didn't lurk in shadows. She didn't wear a mask. She weaponized trust. She turned compassion into a con. And she got away with it, because people wanted to believe in her. Nobody wants to think that the sweet old lady next door is a serial killer. It's easier to look away, to make excuses, to assume the best. And Margaret knew that. She counted on it. By 1987, at least 9 people had disappeared from that boarding house. 9. And nobody had reported a single one missing. Because who was there to report it? These were people with no family, no friends, no one checking in. They were invisible, and Margaret made them disappear. But here's the thing about secrets. Eventually, someone notices. The man who knew too much. Thomas Green was different. He was only 57, younger than most of Margaret's tenants. And sharp. Too sharp. Thomas had been a schoolteacher before a car accident left him with chronic pain and a disability check. He moved into the boarding house in January 1988. And from day one, something felt wrong. He noticed things. The way Margaret hovered over tenants at mealtime. The way she insisted on handling everyone's mail personally. The way she asked invasive questions about family, about wills, about bank accounts. And then, there were the smells. Late at night, coming from the backyard. Chemical, sharp, wrong. Thomas started keeping a journal. He wrote down everything. Names of tenants who'd vanished. Dates. Inconsistencies in Margaret's stories. And in March, he did something that probably saved his life. He called a social worker. Her name was Patricia Gaines. And when Thomas spoke to her, he was shaking. "If something happens to me," he said, "look in the yard." Patricia asked what he meant. Thomas paused, then whispered, "She's burying them." Patricia didn't know what to do. She had no proof, no evidence, just the word of a disabled man who seemed paranoid. But she filed a report anyway. And that report, it sat on a desk for 2 months. In May, Thomas got sick. Violently sick, vomiting, tremors, confusion. He was rushed to the hospital. And he told the doctors something chilling: "Margaret poisoned my food." The doctors ran tests, found nothing conclusive. Margaret visited him in the hospital, crying, concerned. "I don't know why he'd say such a thing," she sobbed. "I've done nothing but care for him." The doctors believed her. Thomas was diagnosed with anxiety and paranoia. And when he was discharged, he was sent right back to the boarding house. Back to Margaret. 3 weeks later, Margaret called 911. "I need help," she said calmly. "One of my tenants. I think he's passed." Paramedics arrived. Thomas Green was dead in his bed. Natural causes, the coroner ruled. Margaret cried at the funeral. She was the only one there. But here's what nobody knew. Before he died, Thomas had mailed his journal to Patricia Gaines. And when she opened that package and read those pages, everything changed. The investigation begins. Patricia Gaines didn't sleep that night. She read Thomas's journal cover to cover, page after page of observations, suspicions, fear, and the last entry, dated 2 days before his death. "She knows I know. I don't think I'm getting out." Patricia went straight to the police. But here's the problem. There was still no proof. No bodies, no witnesses, just a journal and a hunch. Detective Michael Ramirez was assigned the case. He was skeptical at first. An old lady serial killer? Come on. But he agreed to look into it. He started pulling records, social security payments, bank transactions, tenant lease agreements, and what he found made his blood run cold. Margaret Holloway had been cashing checks for 12 different people. 12. And according to social security records, most of them were still listed as alive, still receiving benefits. But when Detective Ramirez tried to locate them, nothing. No phone numbers, no forwarding addresses, no hospital records. They'd simply vanished. In November 1988, Detective Ramirez got a warrant. Not for murder, for fraud. It was all he could get. But it was enough. On a cold Tuesday morning, police arrived at the boarding house on Willow Creek Lane. Margaret answered the door in her bathrobe. smiling. Officers, what a surprise. Can I make you some coffee? She wasn't nervous. She wasn't panicking. She was calm. Detective Ramirez explained the warrant. Fraud investigation. Financial records. Margaret nodded sweetly. Of course, officer. I have nothing to hide. Let me get dressed and I'll help you with anything you need. She even offered them cookies. While officers searched the house, Detective Ramirez walked the property. That's when he noticed the backyard. It was wrong. Patches of fresh soil, uneven ground, areas where grass wouldn't grow. And that smell, chemical, earthy, decay. He called for a K9 unit. The cadaver dogs hit immediately. Multiple sites, 7 distinct locations. And when the excavation team arrived with shovels, Margaret tried to leave. She didn't run, didn't scream, she just calmly walked toward her car. An officer stopped her. "Mom, we need you to stay." Margaret smiled. "Of course, dear, I was just going to the store. We'll need more coffee if you're all staying." Even then, she was playing the part. Unearthing evil. They found the first body at 2:47 p.m. wrapped in a floral blanket. Shallow grave, less than 3 feet down. An elderly man. Advanced decomposition. Then another. 7 bodies in total. Some had been there for years. Some for months. All of them Margaret's tenants. Forensic teams worked through the night. News vans lined the street. Neighbors stood in horror. And Margaret, she sat on her porch, handcuffed, calm as ever. A reporter shouted, "Did you kill those people?" Margaret looked up, and smiled. "I took care of them," she said softly. "They had no one else." Chilling silence. 3 seconds. Asterisk. Autopsies revealed traces of poison in several bodies. Arsenic, antifreeze, sleeping pills, slow deaths, painful deaths, deaths that looked natural, if you didn't look too close. And Margaret had been careful. She'd space him out, months apart, different methods, never enough to raise suspicion. Until Thomas Green. Investigators believe there may be more bodies. The property was large, the ground disturbed in multiple places. But some graves were never found. To this day, families wonder, is my father under those roses? Is my mother beneath that shed? We may never know. Trial of a killer. The trial began in March 1989. The media called her the Willow Creek caretaker. The prosecution called her a monster. The defense, they claimed she was mentally ill, delusional, that she truly believed she was helping. Margaret testified in her own defense. Soft-spoken, tearful. "I loved them," she said. "They were my family. I only wanted to ease their suffering." But the evidence was overwhelming. Forged signatures, stolen checks, poison purchases, 7 bodies. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge asked if she had anything to say. Margaret stood, smiled, and said, "I'd do it again. They needed me." She was sentenced to life without parole. She's still alive today, 94 years old, in a California prison. She's never shown remorse. The house remembers. The house on Willow Creek Lane still stands. It's been sold 3 times. No one stays long. Neighbors say the ground never settles right. Flowers don't grow. And sometimes, late at night, people swear they hear digging. This case haunts me, not just because of what Margaret did, but because of how long she got away with it. She hid in plain sight. She weaponized kindness. And she reminded us of something terrifying. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes, they look like grandmothers. If this case disturbed you, good. It should. And if you want more deep dives like this, subscribe now. Hit that notification bell, and check out our playlist of serial killer cases that'll keep you up at night. Drop a comment and let me know, what case should we cover next? Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and remember, some houses don't just hold memories, they keep secrets.